Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Career Chronicles. I'm your host, Sloan Bartley, and so excited to be here with Adam Broda. Adam is the founder of Broda Coaching, and we were able to connect through LinkedIn. As you know, many of my guests and I have connected on there. It's a great platform, and Adam's putting out great content and providing great advice to folks. And so we connected, and I'm excited to ask him some questions about the ways in which he helps level the playing field for folks from different backgrounds when it comes to career opportunities. So Adam, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, I'm excited for this one. We've had this on the calendar for a while, so
We
looking
have
forward to
Adam's
getting into the
super
questions.
busy.
Yeah.
Adam's schedule is hard, so we finally found some mutual time, which is great. And I appreciate you being willing to be patient and put us on the calendar for when it worked for you. Before we dig into more specific questions, do you want to talk a little bit about what it is you do and how you got into coaching?
For sure. I can try to keep
Yeah.
it to a relatively small amount of time because that's a loaded question. Um, yeah, I'd say like in current state, I still am a member of like the professional corporate world, right? I still have a full-time job. I work in tech. I'm a product manager. I really do enjoy the 9 to 5 to some degree. Obviously, nothing's perfect, of course. Um, I would say that my coaching journey started in like 2020. So
Okay.
I had been with the Boeing company for about 8, 9 years and had at the time, this is like almost the end of 2019. I was getting ready to go out on maternity leave with my first kid. And I was an acting director and had been pushing very hard to try and make the next level, right, to get into the executive ranks at that company, and had been doing lots of like leadership developing programs and coaching and mentoring programs. And through a lot of those development efforts, kind of learned that I really had a passion for coaching on different topics, a lot of it career oriented or business oriented. And when my first child showed up and I went out on maternity leave, a lot changed for me, right? I started to like realize like, hey, maybe I want my work environment to look different. Maybe I don't want to do this job that I thought I did. Maybe my priorities are tad bit different, which I'm sure if you've ever had a kid, you're like, of course, Adam,
Had
that's
one
normal.
last year, so yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I can
Yeah.
relate to that.
Yeah. So that happened. And that's where I started to think about like, okay, well, you know, maybe my goals are different. And then of course, COVID happened, right? And working in the aerospace industry when the world goes into lockdown and no one's traveling is kind of like the writing on the wall that hey, there's probably going to be a pretty big layoff coming.
Yeah.
So yeah, started exploring other companies. That's how I got into tech, and then also launched a side business. And the first year of that side business, basically all of 2020, was just this massive experimentation process where I tried to figure out what kind of coaching I wanted to do, what conversations I enjoyed the most, what kind of materials I felt comfortable delivering. And I can definitely tell you, I was a terrible life coach, so ruled that one out right away. And ultimately got into career coaching as kind of the thing I wanted to do, and kind of build a brand and a business around. And fast forward to now, that's a lot of what I still do. I can talk
Yeah.
more, later maybe about what the program that we run is in 2024 and 2025, but that's really how I
Yeah.
got here.
What's the bread and butter of career coaching? Is it meeting with job seekers and helping them develop a vision, a plan? Like how level is it, and how nitty gritty is it? When you're coaching somebody.
Yeah, I mean, career coaching, and I'm sure that this is no surprise for me to say this. It's this giant choose your own adventure book, and I'm sure you remember those from when you're a little kid,
Oh
where
yeah.
like you could make a decision at any point in reading the book and you'll end up in a different ending spot. And it's the same with career coaching. My answer to your specific question is going to probably depend on like the level that I'm operating at, right? Like if I'm launching a career coaching business for early careers, the questions that are common, the pain points that I'm addressing, the discussions that I'm having on a recurrent basis are probably much different than what they look like at the mid to late level or the executive to
Hmm.
suite level, in
Do you
terms of what.
specialize in one of those areas?
Yeah, so I started with early career, and then as the years kind of ticked on, slowly moved up and up, and now I predominantly work with mid to late career professionals, folks that are
Okay.
in that like senior principal director level.
Okay.
And that's really about as high as I want to go right now. I'm pretty happy with the way that things are set up. And I would say, again, to your question, a lot of what we're doing is not, how to job search, right? How to submit an application, how to network per se, right? Or even, what to put in a resume. A lot of people with 10, 15, 20 plus years of experience already have a pretty good grip of how to do that. A lot of what we're doing is helping people take experiences, results, accomplishments, and skills from one industry or job and rebrand, repackage,
Mm,
market that stuff for a new industry,
the
right?
pivot, the
Predominantly the
elusive
tech and
pivot.
right. It's the pivoting process. It's not so much like, hey, you need a skill and I'm going to tell you about the skill you need. It's very, very rarely that. A lot of times it's just
Yeah.
this is how we talk. Let's say that you are, a business analyst in one industry and you want to be a program manager in another industry. We need to use program management words and terms and metrics in the way we describe what you are doing so that it makes sense to a hiring manager trying to hire a program manager. It doesn't mean your experience is bad. It just means that we might need to talk about it in a different way. So that's a lot of what we do inside of our coaching community, especially for the level of talent that we work with.
Awesome. That makes total sense, and I appreciate you laying that out for me. I assume since you are coaching some of these higher level individuals, you've probably been exposed to some of the pain points and frustrations that they've experienced over time, and maybe those are part of the reasons why they're making a pivot. What are some of those common frustrations or pain points you're hearing from folks?
Oh yeah, I mean, another fantastic question. I'd probably say, like, if I could categorize things into the top three, number one is just like, hey, Adam, the job market is really tough. I'm not used to it being this hard to find a job or this hard to convert, interview opportunities. And what I
For
used
sure.
to do that worked is no longer working. And now I'm looking for help and advice for what works. So
Yeah.
that's probably the most common discussion set that we have inside of our community, or even with prospective people that want to join, is let's just talk about what those things look like and what works when the market is really saturated. How do you stand out and how do you separate yourself?
Yeah.
The second is exactly what I kind of was hitting on before, is it's probably just the process of articulating your value proposition in the right way. So you need career clarity, you need to know who your audience is, you need to know, roughly who you're going to be selling your information to. And then once you've determined that, and that's part of what we help with, it's that branding process, that rewriting process, using terms and job description themes and key skills for where you want to go. That transformation process is probably the second biggest thing.
Okay.
The third one, and again, there's way more on this list, but just
Sure. Just
in
the top three
general,
things that kind of come to mind. Just perfect.
it's usually the networking process in the modern world, right?
Yep.
Like, what does effective
Yeah.
network look like in 2024? And is it as simple as just messaging people that work at the companies I want to work at? Does that count, right? Or do you do more or different things? What does that strategy actually entail? And the short answer is, like, we build strategies for every single person we work with, right? Like, person A's networking strategy is probably going to look a little bit different from person B, depending on companies and roles and what they're starting with in terms of network, and then also the value they have to talk about. So that's a lot of where we spend our time in general.
Are most of the people you're coaching, are they coming to you without, they're already unemployed, or are they currently employed and are going to look for a new job while they're employed?
I'd say it's about 60-40. So
Okay.
probably something like 60% of the people that reach out to me, this isn't necessarily the folks that join, but just that reach out, I'd say have jobs.
Okay.
Probably
So
about
more so on the
40%.
jobs. Okay.
Yeah. 40% is in some kind of, like, I've either been impacted, I think
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be impacted, or I'm, literally being impacted right now. So I'd probably put
Yeah.
them into that category.
Sure. Okay. That really helps. I just wanted to get an idea of like who the population was that we're talking about. And you and I have had conversations about, as a career coach, we've talked about, my work as a recruiter, your work as a career coach. We care about creating opportunities for people. We obviously have that in common. And I, on the podcast, am talking about ways to increase recruitment and retention for women in tech. And, since you are in the tech industry, you and I had that conversation as well last time we spoke. And I'd love to know more about the ways in which you're leveling the playing field for people in tech, or more specifically women in tech, to sort of get in that tech pipeline.
Yeah, I can kind of hit on the, what do we do for women in tech, or women that are interested in moving into tech, or even more specifically, it's just like competitive companies and jobs, right? I'd say at the end of the day, we focus less on tech and just, roles that a lot of people are going to be competing for, right? High
I like
paying,
that.
high flexibility, whatever that is.
Yeah,
I'd say it's kind of two things. Again, speaking in generalities, because it's obviously more complicated than that. But
for
the
sure.
first one, in terms of like common themes for the female, or women clients that I work with, number one is going to be, it's them taking credit for the work that they've done and figuring out how much to claim as opposed to how
Mm-hmm.
much to attribute to another group.
Yep.
So, I'm picking up the average resume and I'm looking at it, and it's a lot of language around, our group accomplished this thing, or my team accomplished this thing, or, we delivered a thing, but I don't necessarily have specific impact to a customer or to a business. I'm, talking about how significant the improvement was, but I don't have numbers to back it up. So that's kind of step number one, is let's make sure that you have return on investment numbers. You understand how your work directly connected to, value for some entity, some team, some customer, something. Let's go through a process of determining what the right metrics and units to measure that impact are. We spend a lot of time there, right?
Yeah.
If someone's saying, I did a thing and it made a difference, we're going to really dig down on, let's get a number, right? Let's figure out what it looked like before you showed up and what it looked like after you showed up. Let's see if we can get common units on both sides. And the difference between those two is your impact. And sometimes the common denominator is a percentage, right? Maybe we don't know the hours or the dollars or the users, but we could probably get to a percentage if we can get similarities on the before and after. So step one is, yeah, let's help them nail down what they're claiming credit for, the specificity over, that impact, and then who was impacted, so that they feel really confident about what they can do for some future customer, some future employer. Um, the second one is, again, probably no shocker, but it's just confidence in the interview process, right?
Right.
Uh, and I'm not offending anyone. I'm just speaking in generalities. A lot of times what I see when I sit in these mock interviews, because I do a lot of mock interviews, is what I would just call like more regressive language with the women that I work with, right? So
For
I
sure. And
ask you a
I'll
question.
reiterate that as a
Go
woman,
ahead.
just so that you feel like you don't
Sure.
feel like you're the one making the claim. Women, generally speaking, not all women, but myself, and I've talked to other women in lots of different networking groups, we do tend to struggle with this a little bit more than men. I haven't definitely not done the science behind the reasoning, but we just tend to use more, I've always called it passive language. And
Mm.
it's just kind of like just the default. We just tend to be a little more passive in our language choice and the taking credit piece. And I'm totally aligned with you. Just wanted to say that out so that you didn't feel like you were making the claim.
No, I appreciate that. And again, it's not universally on one side or the other, right? Like I have
For
tons of
sure.
male clients that do the exact same
They struggle with
problem.
the same thing. Yeah. And some
Yeah.
women who don't struggle at all.
Yeah. Sometimes it's almost more like personality traits that indicate what's going to be said more so than gender. But again, kind of back to your
For
question.
sure.
So yeah, hearing a lot of like I'm sorry language in
Oh, yeah.
calls, where it's like I ask you a question about, tell me about a time where you exceeded expectations, right? And they'll give an answer, they'll kind of go through the star or Carl format, and then we get to the end and it's like, was that a good answer? Would you like another answer? It's like, well, no. You
Just be
you know
confident in
that
the one you
that's right.
gave.
That's a good answer. You don't have to ask that question, right?
Yeah.
So it's a lot
Or
of
the
that
does
kind
that
of
make
stuff.
sense is another qualifier that we often use. Does that make sense? I have to catch myself. I'm like, just keep it in, just zip it up.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I have to do the same thing for myself. It's just there's a lot more tendencies for that, with a lot of the female or women clients that I work with. So those are probably the two biggest things. It doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily get all that much more complicated beyond it. It's It's
No.
impact and claiming credit, or taking credit, and then it's confidence in what you're saying and some of the small language adjustments we make when when you answer questions or you give an interview. That's where I spend, I think, the most time trying to help level
Yeah.
that playing field.
Yeah, I think those are great call outs. And, when you're thinking about the language you use in your resume and the language you use in interviews, I think that's amazing advice. And I would just, reiterate those things. What I hear you saying is reminding me of that idea of imposter syndrome.
Mm.
And we talk a lot about that in some of the women networking groups that I'm a part of. I don't know why, it afflicts us, and it may afflict men too. I actually haven't talked to any men about that idea of imposter syndrome, but I have interviewed several women in leadership who are incredible and inspiring, and they're still experiencing those feelings of doubt. And do I belong here? Should I take credit for this? Was it me? And so it's really important for coaches, recruiters, whoever, mentors, managers, really important for us to do what you said, which is just really just nudge a little bit in the direction of, yeah, look at what this place was before you got here and what it is when you're leaving. Like, you did that. What was your part in that? So great
Yeah.
call outs, for sure. I was curious as well. We've talked a lot about like improving your resume and your confidence in interviews. What is your advice to people to break through the ghosting of job postings when there's hundreds and hundreds of applicants? And what if nobody's ever reading your resume? What if nobody's ever giving you the chance to interview? What do you do then?
Yeah, I'll kind of come at your question from two different perspectives. The first one is, as a person that hires a lot of people and posts a lot of job recs and has worked in a couple
Gets a
different
lot of
companies.
applicants, I'm sure.
Yeah, like I'd say if you can, right? The ideal scenario, in my opinion, is to leverage your network to the point where you're invited to apply. We don't talk enough about, I think in general, we don't talk enough about like really what are the best possible scenarios that you can shoot for as a job seeker. And really at the very bottom of that list is, get a job notification, submit an application, try to network with somebody and see what happens.
Yeah.
It's a low likelihood possibility. It's better than nothing, but
Yeah.
it's still low likelihood. The way that we would teach our clients is you're going to run a multifaceted networking approach, right? You're going to be reaching out directly to people you don't know. You're going to be reaching out to people you do know. You're going to be possibly, creating content, quote, of some kind to pull traffic back to a landing page, whether that's a LinkedIn profile, a website, a profile, a GitHub, whatever. We're
Yeah.
going to be doing a lot of things in parallel, and you know you can think of it like a sales and marketing funnel. The whole point of that is to
Yeah. You
generate
are selling
leads,
yourself. Yeah, for
right? You're
sure.
trying to generate leads, trying to turn conversations into opportunities. And if you play the cards right and your funnel, drives quality leads and quality conversations, really the end state is that you've convinced someone through some exchange of information that you're legit and they're going to
Yeah.
want to interview you. They're going to want to talk to you more. They're going to want to connect you with hiring folks and recruiters. And like, that's really the pinnacle of what we try to do with people on our program is if you play the right networking cards, someone's going to ask you to apply. And then we don't have to
Yeah.
deal with this, like, gosh, who do I message? And how do I know if this
Yeah.
application
It's the
is real?
worst.
Um, so that's the first thing I'll say. And the
Yeah,
second
that's
thing I'll say
great.
is, of course, that can't always happen.
Sure.
Um, but in general, we try to spend more of our time doing that and less of our time applying. But yeah, in a world where there's tons of people in the applicant pool, I mean, there's some basic things that you can do. Is number one, I'd say LinkedIn as a job board is really not all that accurate, in my opinion. I don't put a lot of faith or trust in LinkedIn as a job board. It's great for you to be able to see things like who's posted and who's talking
Right.
about stuff and like maybe even like the volume of posts. Like you can run a search and you can see how many things have been added recently. So like, Microsoft just approved a bunch of roles for Q3, Q4 and jumped a bunch of stuff into LinkedIn. So you could be like, oh, hey, Microsoft is hiring, right? But basic step number one is anytime you're about to apply in any capacity, don't do it through LinkedIn, right? Go to Microsoft's career page, check the opening, look at all the information there, grab a buddy and say, hey, can you confirm, because you work at this company, that this role is still open? Okay, if you can. But always apply on careers pages. Number two, I would say, if you're not being invited to apply and you're trying to seek out, again, competitive companies, competitive roles, I'd really caution people on just submitting applications with no connections, referrals, or
Yeah.
recommendations for jobs that have been open more than 2 weeks, right? The smaller
Okay.
and the less reputable company that we've got, then the less relevant that advice becomes. I'd even say
Sure.
that the higher level the role, the less relevant that advice becomes. But yeah, 2 weeks, for a company in the Fortune 500 space, it is with this kind of job market, like those pipelines are full. Those
Yeah.
pipelines are probably full.
Within
Recruiters, of
like
course,
48 hours, really, it feels like sometimes.
in some cases, yeah, like
In some cases.
recruiters are going to leave roles open for different periods of time. You won't know
Yeah,
how long they're going to leave them open for. In some cases, it's a week, sometimes two, sometimes three. Again, it can depend on what year it is and how the economy is. But
for
if a
sure.
role, gets 100 applicants in a week, you can probably bet that that role will be closed, quote, or or all those candidates will be bucketized, and they'll start reviewing those candidates and they'll fill the pipeline with those candidates. So I'd say early application is kind of basic step number two. uh, Set up notifications, use platforms like IFTTT, Google Careers, get notifications for when stuff posts. That's a good way to do it. Even LinkedIn, again, is fairly accurate with notifications. But yeah, try to be early apply.
What
Basic
is
step number three.
IFFF2? Is that a dumb question?
Oh, sorry. Sometimes I just say random acronyms and I don't explain them. It's a
I
bad
was so
engineering
scared to
habit.
ask. I'm like, I should probably know what that is as a
It's
recruiter,
a
but I
it's a website called if this then that. And it's
uh,
basically it's like a Zapier, if you're familiar with
yeah,
Zapier.
I've
It's an
heard of them.
integrations Yeah, it's an integrations platform. So you could say, hey, I'm going to create an integration between Craigslist and Gmail, and every time Trek Bicycle is posted, it's going to kick me an email and send me the link, right? So you could create an
okay.
integration between, Google Careers and an email or a text message, and anytime senior product manager at Microsoft gets posted, I get a text message.
So it
Um,
integrates between two different sites, two different websites.
yeah, you can
Okay.
create tons of integrations between lots of different places. So it's also free. At least it was like a couple months ago when I last looked. But
Okay.
in any
Cool.
case,
It's a good
yeah,
shout out.
yeah, right. You should be sponsoring this podcast.
Yeah, please.
So yeah, that's basic number two, and then I forget what I was going to say for basic number three, but
Sorry, I
oh
cut you
yeah,
off.
no, I remember. It would be leverage a point of contact if possible. So generally speaking, I wouldn't encourage my clients to spend time applying at places where they don't have any connections, right? I would just say, strategically speaking, we'd want you to focus where your network is. We'd want you to focus where you have people that can help you separate yourself, increase your likelihood in whatever form or fashion that is. Um, so yeah, if you've got contacts at the firm, when you've submitted an application, reach out to them, see if you can get an email bump or some material sent to the right people, see if you can get an incentivized referral or recommendation. There's all kinds of things that they could potentially do, but that one again kind of is obvious. And then lastly, this is kind of where the extra credit comes in, is we do strategically use extra materials when we're networking or applying or interviewing, such as pitch decks, right? Or portfolios built out in Notion, right? Or portfolios built out in GitHub. And we'll leverage that material when we're in the application phase. So, maybe that's part of what we send to the recruiting team when we've said, hey, we've submitted our application. I'd really love to be considered for this position. Here's a pitch deck that I put together, or here's a program that I wrote that I think proves my legitimacy. Something like that.
And
I would
that's
say,
generally well received by the folks that you're reaching out to.
I would tell you, as long as it's quality, right? Like,
Quality
as
and
long as it's a quality effort, it
relevant.
does generally get well received. If it's just like someone created this random PowerPoint in Gamma in 5 minutes, then it's probably not well received. But this is all comes
Probably a
back to my
negative.
point of, like, the strategy that I'd be using for people inside of my program is we're niching down, right? We're only talking about 3 to 5 companies. We're only talking about 1 to
Okay,
3
that helps
positions.
give
So
context. Yeah.
everything that we're doing, from resumes to LinkedIn's to networking to pitch decks to extra material, is all pre-targeted. So it's
Yeah.
not like, oh, this random company I've never heard of before popped up. I'm going to build, I'm going to spend multiple hours creating, a presentation for this company that, I've literally never thought of before. That wouldn't
Yeah.
necessarily
So
happen. But
it feels much more, or it is much more genuine and authentic rather than performative of like, let me just create this PowerPoint.
right.
Okay.
Right.
I like it. Do you have a success rate you can share of the folks you work with, your customers?
Yeah, I would say that our program it's not what I would call typical. I'm sure every coach thinks that about what they do. So that's kind of a sketchy
Don't we
thing to
all
say.
think that about ourselves? I'm not the typical recruiter. I'm special.
Yeah. Yeah, we're unique. Um, what I would say is that our community does not have an end date. So we don't limit access to the folks that join. There's no scenario where I would say, hey, Sloan, welcome to the
Mm,
Broda coaching program. You now have 3 months to do a thing or 6 months
okay.
to land a job. So we don't have an end date. Once you join for
Okay.
life. Um,
Okay.
Everyone in our program will have a timeline that is created based off of their availability and their preferences. So I have people that are in my program that are trying to land jobs very, very fast for different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
I have people that are trying to land jobs at, 10-month timelines, right? They're going
Yeah.
real
Just
slow.
passively looking. Yeah. Just
So
want
the
to
way
see
I
so
would
what's out there.
share a success metric is a little bit
Oh,
different, right? I wouldn't
yeah.
say, hey, we're X% successful with landing people jobs inside of 6 months, because that's not how it works. I would
For
say
sure.
in current state, we're about 70% successful with helping our clients hit the objectives on their timeline when they
Yeah.
want to hit them.
Okay.
So yeah, there's of course reasons why timelines pause or freeze or edit or update,
Oh yeah.
but we're relatively pretty good about holding different objectives or milestones that they want to accomplish when they want to accomplish them.
Yeah. Well, if you can believe it, we're already at 27 minutes. So I want to, keep us under 30 if possible. This has gone by really quickly. The last question that I wanted to ask you, I get asked a lot from people, how should I do outreach on LinkedIn when I'm shooting somebody a connection request? What's the formula? What should be in that connection request message when you are a job seeker and you are looking to connect with somebody at a company you're interested in?
Yeah, I mean, I would say we're really big fans of using second and third degree connections.
Mm-hmm.
If you have someone in your first degree of connections that could create an intro to someone in your second or your third degree, I'd say intros generally do a heck of a lot better than cold messages of any kind. So if you can get someone that's willing to just connect you with a, hey, this is my friend, they have questions about where you work kind of a message, those generally do much, much better.
Yeah.
We have probably 70-80% success rates with those kinds of messages. If you don't have that, right, let's say you want to work at a startup and you literally know absolutely no one and there's no second or third degree connections. I mean, the basic rule of thumb is go commonality, right? Look for
Yep.
commonalities between you and the person. Don't make your request about the favor that you need. Don't make it about the chore that you want them to do, right? The whole objective of the initial connection should be to just get connected, right? To just start a
Yeah.
conversation. If you can start a
Yeah.
conversation in comments, if you can start it on a LinkedIn post or an article on Medium, wherever it can start, that's good, right? We'd rather have it start there than in the connection request. But if that's not a possibility, look for commonalities. Hey, we went to the same school. Hey, we were part of the same alumni group. Hey, we live in the same town. Hey, your kid went to my middle school. Whatever it was. That's what gets people to respond is, don't make it about, I need a job. Help
Yeah.
me. And I know that sounds really cliche, but I cannot tell you how common that is. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it does get shut down pretty quickly if it comes across as help me, I need a job. And it just, for better, for
yeah,
worse, I mean, I think we all would want to be the type of person that would help anybody, but a lot of
yeah.
us, our hands are tied in being able to help folks. So it's not the best. It's a transactional approach to networking where if they don't have something to give you or if they can't help you, they'll probably just ignore the message because they don't want to grapple with how to figure out how to respond when they can't help you. So it's just like,
Exactly.
ignore. But if you're looking to make a real connection, that should be much more well received and much more effective. And then it could turn into something in the long run.
Yeah. A lot of it comes down to like how much time you have too, right? Like if you need to move very fast and you don't have the time to offer something valuable or insightful, then your approach is going to be a little bit different. Sometimes it really is a numbers game, right? Sometimes we do play a bit of a numbers game and we message lots of people and we go low effort. Sometimes we go higher effort with less messages. It's just dependent on the specific situation.
Yeah. And I think that speaks to the power of LinkedIn. When you mentioned the first, second, and third degree connections, it's a place of discovery. It's where you can get a lot of information about your network in real time and a lot of information about your network's network and so on and so forth. So it's a great tool for that stage of the job search. Well, like I said, we've hit the 30-minute mark. Adam, I really appreciate your time today. How can people get in touch with you if they're interested in working with you as a coach?
Yeah, I mean, the easiest way is just to send me a message on LinkedIn. I'm a message hawk. So if you have questions, if you'd like to know more information, if you're just curious about what we do, send me a message. We'll reach out. We'll get you in touch with somebody in our team, or we'll have you come to one of our master classes. We do master classes every week where we do a little bit of teaching, and you can start that way. But LinkedIn is the best way.
Awesome. I love it. Well, thanks again for your time. It was good to see you, and hopefully our paths cross again. Bye, everybody.
Absolutely.
Thanks for being here.